Shalom, one is self, souls be given no praise to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushua, Bashem Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of great Most High, and honors to brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world English calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. Son's true name is Yahushai, and when we pray Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, but meaning in, her meaning that, and Sham meaning names Yahweh, and the name of Yahushai. Real quick, just wanted to just get on this one real quick. I have no idea where it's gonna go, but I just had a thought. I was remembering one Albanian Donny that I went to school with. Well, and he had a particular nickname, which was basically kind of taking the mick out of the fact that although he looked like a so-called white man, he very much fit in amongst amongst black people, okay, so-called black people, right? Which you come into this truth, you understand, that we're not black, that we're Israelites, right? And that idea of black is something that was put on us by our oppressors, okay. And even on that alone, he should be dealt with, because when you understand who you really are, when you understand that you're the sons of the Most High, right, that you're a special people, you move different, right? So Deuteronomy 7:6, without an holy people unto the Lord Yahweh thy power hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Okay, whereas if you're just black's just a color. Right, and then over time, when you start learning the English language, you understand that a lot that is associated with negativity is black. The only thing I can really think of is debt, right? Where it's like if you're on the black, you're good, and if you're on the red, things ain't doing too well for you. Okay, but that's one of the many lies and many strongholds that this truth basically opens your eyes up from, right? You start to understand that no, there ain't no black, there ain't no white, and really it's all about the spirit, right? So just think of a precept in my mind right now. Just don't, those ones not brought it out in a long time. So I'm just trying to remember what it's saying. I'm just looking at my other tab right now. Sorry, slug, yeah. Nah, I can't think of the precept. Right, but yeah, let's grab that, right? You start to understand it ain't about flesh, it is about spirit, right? So Romans 8:16, the spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, right? Once again, this individual, this Albanian Donny, right, amongst just archetype Jake, if you will, right? He just fit in, right? I wouldn't say he was one of the mandem, right? And what I mean by that, like he weren't hood or anything, but it's just like around Jay, he just fit in, and he had a nickname, that attributed. But then I was thinking about how, now that I see him, see him, like one of those cats you see like once a year or whatever, right? Saw him, and that at a place, and I was kind of just observing it. I was thinking about it, and I was like, yo, if brothers was to meet this individual, right, what would their initial perception be, right? Which ultimately will be Jake, right? But the point is more just seeing how over time, as he started, obviously started working around Esau, right, more and more. Right, certain little things change. Obviously, the spirit's still the spirit, and having grown up around Jake, right, Salakia, having grown up around Jake, there are certain things that are always going to stand out. But it reminded me of a phrase that I used to say way back when, which is, it was this idea of Edomized Jakes, right? And when you look through the scriptures, you have this concept of a Greek. You have this concept, of a quote barbarian, and you got Jakes that were all throughout different spheres of the different societies, and as such they would have had certain things about them Salakis, you would have had certain things about them that would have stood out as basically, of the field and professions where they're in. The person that's coming to mind at the moment, right, is Cornelius, right? So this is Acts 10, right? It says that there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band, right? And this is it. Even as I'm doing this right now, I'm thinking about how a police officer is in amongst his ranks. Now that's not to say that he all cops, as an example, are exactly the same, but there are just certain things that you pick up, right? If you're around it, if you're in an environment for a long period of time, there are just certain things and traits that you'll pick up, to the point, for instance, rugby, right? As an example, I don't know if Americans know too much about rugby, but because I know NFL is quite you get a lot of Jake playing NFL, right? Straight up Jake, that is rugby. Obviously in sports you're gonna have Jake, right? But over here it's certainly in England certainly like a quote white boy sport, if you will, right? But as such, the Jakes that play rugby, they act strange. I'll put it to you like that, man. Not to say any brothers that played rugby or whatever, but you know how it is amongst them rugby dons, right? There's certain things that they do that if you're a quote in quotes regular archetype type of Jake, you do quote unquote Jake things, whatever the hell that is, because Jake do everything, right? If you're in England, you know what I mean by that, right? But let me read this. Proverbs 12:26. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. And that's been the problem that as a nation we've always had. Whenever we've been around these heathens, we've always been, allured by them, right? Started picking up their ways, right? Started doing the things that they do, and in the process, pissed the Most High off, right? To our destruction, right? Which is why ultimately the Most High separated the nations, right? So Deuteronomy 30, is it 32? Yeah, 32 and 8. It says, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam. So that's the thing. People say, oh, we all come from Adam, right? I believe there'll be a precept in here, right? Yeah. Second Ezra 6:54, and after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen, right? And that's it, right? So we all quote come from Adam, right? But the thing is, it's like the Lord has his elect nation, which is Israel, and then he has the rest, right? You read Isaiah 40:15, right? It says, behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket and are counted as a small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. Okay. So yeah, once again, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, you got the Israelites, you got these different nations, but ultimately the Most High separated the sons of Adam, right? This whole intermingling and stuff like that. The Most High is not really with, not really. The Most High is not with it, right? Let me just finish the precept and then I'll jump on to the next precept, right? It says Deuteronomy 32 and 8. So when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, right? We're going to jump over now to Genesis 11. Right, it says from the top, it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. It says, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Right? So that everyone was one, right? Plotting and this, that, and the other, right? But read this, Genesis 11:5. It says, and the Lord Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And Yahweh said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. right? Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they might not understand one another's speech, right? So the Lord Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, which means confusion, right? It says, because the Lord Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad from upon the face of all the earth. Right, so what we're reading is people tried to be together, and then the Lord was like, nah, I ain't with it, and he separated them, right? And once again, when you start to understand and observe, Jake, you get Mose, you get Edomite Mose, but then when you get a Jake Mose, they just be the most of the most, right? Same, with anything, when Jake starts being around the heathen, right, he takes on the customs of the heathens more than the heathens themselves. Okay, so we'll read that again. Proverbs 12:26. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduces them. Right, the priest that's come to mind. Let me see if it's relevant here. Jeremiah, I'll read it. Jeremiah 2:33. Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. Right. So once again, when Jake's around the heathen, they start doing the things of the heathens. Right. And it is it when you haven't got the fear of the Lord, right? You get enticed into these things, right? The amount of time, that I've, been at a work function and someone's been like, yo, Luke, just try this, just try this thing, medium rare, right? And I'm just like, nah, I don't eat medium rare, But when Jake is amongst the heathen, right, and they have no, a bearing, if you will, guess what? They just eat. There's nothing there to stop them, right? So over time, Jake then starts, there are certain things that we characterize Jake as doing, right? As rather, you used to be able to characterize Jake as not doing. Like you used to be able to say, oh yeah, Jake don't do X or Jake don't do Y. But over time, right, as Jake has spent more and more time around Esau, right, Jake starts to become more and more like Esau. So this is Micah 2:10. This comes to mind. It says, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction. And truer words can't be said. You look at Jake, right, as Jake that you work with, Jake that you may know in other environments or whatever. Right? They may know certain things, they may not know certain things, but when you listen to them, you can hear the serpent's poison, right? Coming out of their mouths, right? Because they've spent a lot of time, right? Amongst Esau. And imagine these are the Jakes. You get certain Jakes that will pick up Edomitish things, right? Heathenistic things, and these are Jakes that ain't necessarily amongst the heathen like that, right? But then imagine you get Jakes that Israelite foreigners that have been have spent a lot of time, right, with Esau, like just straight up Esau, right? I think about you get because I met certain individuals that are very well to do, right? And I meet them, I was like, yo, this is a Jake, so-called white person, white guy, and look at him, like, hey, it's a straight up Jake, like one of them people you meet, and it's like immediately like, this is a Jake, right? But then they've grown up around like they you might see the people that they roll with, and they're all just straight up Edomites, right? And you can kind of see in their character, okay, right? And then imagine now you might meet that person's parents and stuff like that, and then you're like, yo, is this? And then you start questioning yourself, it's like, yo, is this a Jake? Is it not a Jake? Right? Which is why I know the apostles have used the example over the years of like you might meet a guy, right? You'd be like, yo, this guy's a heathen, right? But then you might meet their son, and then their son, you're like, yo, and I've certainly experienced that. Where, in fact, I've experienced it in two ways. One was with two brothers, right? Where one, it was just like, yeah, it's just this is just a Jake. But then the other brother was like, I'm not too sure. But then over time, he's like, nah, it's a Jake too. And then I've experienced one where it's the son, right? Because the son lived, a cushy life, right? The son, I was like, yo, is my man a heathen? But then you see the dad, and the dad's just, the dad's not, excuse my French, right? But the dad's just a straight up nigger, right? In the way that he does things, right? In the negative sense, right, of that word. You look at him and like, bro, this is just a straight up nigga. It does exactly the dumb and wicked shit that niggas do, right? But let's jump back to Acts the 10th chapter, right? So it says there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band, a devout man, one that feared the Most High with all his house, which gave alms to the people and prayed to the Most High always. He saw in a vision, and this proves to you that Cornelius was an Israelite. Okay, it says he saw in a vision, evidently in the ninth hour of the day, an angel of the Most High coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. Right, and when he looked on him, right, he was afraid and said, what is it, Lord? And he said unto him, thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before the Most High. Right, in which you can read the rest, of this chapter. Right, it goes goes in, right. But and it's talking about this idea of the Israelite foreigners, if you will, right? Which you got Israelite foreigners, which is the whole premise of this video. You get Israelite foreigners everywhere, scattered amongst all people, right? And when they've spent a lot of time around Jake, that Israeliteness comes out of them, right? And then but you get others where they've been around a lot of Edomites, right? And you kind of have to spend a lot more time with that individual to be like, nah, this is a Jake, okay? So that's it. That's why what you call it, one of the things that we've got to do is to be spiritual in when we're judging someone. We observe someone, how they act, how they behave, right? You get certain individuals on looks alone. You go and look at them, right? They got that long hook nose and stuff, right? Got that long hook nose, and then you immediately you're like, yeah, this is just a straight heathen. Then you start observing them, you start seeing what it is that they do, and then you're like, you know what, this is actually a Jake, So once again, that's just the importance of being spiritual and observing exactly what a man is. Right, so let me grab this precept that's coming to mind. So Isaiah 11:11 says, and it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh, the Lord, shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. Right, and that's it. It's right now. It's all about the remnant representing the elect, right? The remnant of Israel representing the elect, right? It says, and what shall be left from Assyria, from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam and Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Right, so basically from everywhere. Right. In fact, when you read Revelation, right, trying to see if we've got the precept there, right? Let's jump to it. Right, it says Revelation 7:9. No, actually, I think is it all from 9? Yeah, from 9. It's lucky. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hand. Right, and when it's talking about all nations, right, it is talking about the fact that Israel scattered amongst all nations, right? Where what's the word I'm looking for? We look like everyone, right? Let me see as well. I think one is Second Ezra's. Is it this one? No, it's not 101. But yeah, in fact, we just finish this one off in Isaiah 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Right. Oh yeah, I forgot that point. That's deep. But yeah, so it says the Hebrew word for recover, qanah, right, is the same in Deuteronomy 28:68. Right, where we recover, right? So we look this up here, right? The usages, right? What's that there? So it's not quite worked. So where are we? Sorry, am I looking at? Oh, so no, it wasn't Revelation. So like, recover. Yeah, recover. So it says kona, right? Usages, and as you see there in Deuteronomy 28:68, right, which says, "And Jehovah shall bring thee again into Egypt with ships by the way wherever I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." Right? We see buy you there, kona, right? Which basically goes into, to be redeemed, right? Which you can read the next precept, Deuteronomy 32:6. "Do you thus requite the Lord Yahweh, O foolish people and unwise? Is not he thy father that hath bought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee?" Right? So let's carry on Isaiah 11:12 now, right? "And he shall set up an ensign for all nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth," right? Because once again, we're scattered, right? We're scattered. And that's it. It's like we go on this side, we go and look like some of the heathens. We might sound like some of the heathens, right? We might to some degrees we might act like some of the heathens in the sense of whatever, but like that's why it's a spiritual thing, and why ultimately it comes down to how someone believes of in this truth. Okay, so as always, Lord's will that was edifying. Till next time we say shalom.